Processes are essential for enhancing efficiency, productivity, and growth in business. While resistance to change may be common, understanding the benefits of streamlined processes can ultimately lead to success in both your business and personal life. Join Brook and Amarri as they discuss the importance of processes and how it can positively impact your personal life and goals.
Hey everyone, it's Brook Riley, and I'm here with Amari. Amari, how you doing?
I'm good, Brooke. In that last stretch of the day, decently caffeinated, not the most extreme levels as normal today. How are you feeling?
Good. I've cracked open my first Celsius, so it always hits nice and smooth. So
Nice.
yeah, little afternoon pick me up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we got no Mike Riley today. He's got a busy day, but I thought you and I could just talk about really a topic that you and I would say are big fans of and have really started to implement and change and adapt. And that's the whole idea of having systems and processes in place for your business.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, I think that regardless of if you have a Fortune 500 company, a medium-sized business, a small business, I mean, hell, if it's just you as a consultant, I think having processes in place for your business is just so critical. It's so, at least for me, it just helps alleviate some of the anxiety. Um, just kind of having those daily, weekly, monthly, like those goals. And okay, Monday I've got payroll in the morning, Monday afternoon I'm going through any questions our VAs have on the payroll, and then Tuesday it's this, Wednesday it's this, Thursday it's this. I mean, it's like having a clipboard or a notepad or a spreadsheet. Like, I don't think I could do my job as well without having you know, those systems in place. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, in our business, and I mean, when you're just kind of going through life or business in general, there's just things that are going to come out of left field, and you have to kind of improvise and deal with as you're going through it. But I mean, there's a lot of things that come up that you can have a process in place or have dealt with before, and have the knowledge and wisdom on how to deal with it. That just having that process there, having it documented, so that you can always refer to it, give it to someone else, your assistant, and then they can refer to it. So then, you're just kind of really documenting your experiences and your wisdom, and formatting it in a way of just like, here's the step by step. If this happens, do this, and that way, not only are you making yourself more organized and documenting all the kind of things that you go through in your day-to-day business, but you're also able to give that to your assistant, give it to another coworker, and they can also refer to it as well. Because especially in terms of a company, you always have to think of, well, what happens if I'm not here and I'm the only one who went through that specific thing and has the experience on how to deal with it. You need that process. So, if you're sick or on vacation or whatever, and something comes up, then someone else can refer to it. So it's so many different reasons that it's one of those things that can be easy to put off, like just from wanting to tackle your daily things, but making sure that those processes are in place and you're kind of really going through it with a fine tooth comb, just to make sure it's locked in and it's clear, it's not vague. Those things are the things that'll help make operations go smoother and just help for the future when whatever these scenarios that you need these processes for come up again, it's there, it's documented. Hey, here's the steps on how to handle this.
Right. Yeah, I think too, I mean, I think a lot of what I do revolves around spreadsheets. And I think one thing I've definitely noticed is, I have to be able to generate reports and look at, okay, how much have we made? How much have we spent? For not only, our contracting company, but over the past couple months, really kind of opening up the hood of our properties. I know for me, the one thing that I found to be super important is I have to take the time on the front end to make sure that whatever spreadsheet I'm creating, it's easy to understand, it's clean, there's not a lot of different highlighted colors, that, the formulas all add up, the numbers all check out. Like take for instance, our properties. Taking the time and creating a format for a spreadsheet of making sure, okay, I've got every property, I've got an expense column, I've got a utility column, I have a revenue column, I have a profit column, and I'm really taking the time and making sure that everything works. And then once I do that, I hand it off to one of our assistants in the Philippines, who all she does is, and what she just thrives in, is just looking up numbers, values, entering them in, looking at invoices, running a payroll report. So once I've created that process of saying, okay, here's our spreadsheet, here's our goal. I need this updated on Monday morning, my time, and again Thursday morning, my time. Once I meet with her and I go over any questions that she has, I mean, it just runs like clockwork, where I know I can check that spreadsheet, Monday afternoon or Thursday afternoon, and I know that she's going to have everything entered in. And that's kind of one example of a process that I run into a lot, just in my job at the company. And I think one thing, I would say maybe 3, 4 years ago, I would be a little more strict about, if they had feedback or if they had an idea, I would push back and, I don't want to say like not trust them or not trust someone who has a better idea, but just getting that feedback now from the person who's actually doing the work and saying, okay, like, all right, just what are your thoughts on this? Like, have you noticed, is this too much information? Do you think we could simplify this? So it's kind of being more collaborative with them, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that whatever report we're running or we're generating, that it's going to make sense and that the number is the actual number. It's not some fluff. It's not some, made up amount. It's like, no, hey, look, here's your expenses, here's your revenue, here's your taxes, here's the
Mm-hmm.
number.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for whatever process you have is just being open to the fact that just because you do it, you're going to find that there's going to be over time, like, hey, you know what? I think we could do this a different way. So it's just being open to suggestions and being open to finding ways to like improve something.
Right. Just because you have a process doesn't mean that this is all it will ever be and this is as perfect as it will ever get. I mean, especially, in our business where things are changing, evolving, we're trying new things, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. It makes sense that our processes are going to be updated to match, where we're kind of at and what our goals are for that particular year. Another thing I wanted to add to what you said too is, it's great to get that feedback from the people, who are putting that data in, the people that are actually looking. But one of my favorite features of ChatGPT, which I mean, that's just the one that, I know me and you use a lot, even though there's different AI and stuff. But one of my favorite features is being able to upload spreadsheets, upload processes into ChatGPT, and then you can ask ChatGPT the same questions you might be asking, your assistants or, collaborators on that spreadsheet and process, and to say, hey, ChatGPT is, how would you simplify this? Think for a minute, and how would you um, make this more easier to understand? Or are there any parameters or any numbers that are missing from this? Or just really helping, because and you let me know if you feel this way too. It's like once you are looking at a spreadsheet for so much time, it not become noise, but it can be hard to have a fresher perspective on it, just because you've just been looking at it for so long and going over those numbers, so much that you really do need that collaboration, whether it's from someone else working on it, or even AI giving some assistance. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
that
no,
getting that input from
it's
other sources is essential.
yeah, it's kind of scary how ChatGPT is. I mean, it's just so sophisticated. Like, I had to put together a land contract for something personal for myself, and I had to create an amortization schedule, which is basically a breakdown of, all right, here's your principal, interest, taxes, here's the total amount to buy this house. And it was spread out over, I think, 60 months.
Mm,
And I was like, you know what? I don't have the brain capacity to do this at night after looking at spreadsheets for most of the day. So I took the time and entered into ChatGPT. I was like, all right, here's the valuation, here's the taxes each year, here's the interest rate, here's the principal. I fed it all the information, and it took about 30 seconds, and it shot me out this amortization schedule, and I copied and pasted it on a spreadsheet, and I was like, oh, well, there you go. Something that would have taken me probably a couple hours to do. And then on
mm,
top of that, having to double check the numbers, something like Chat GPT, it just, it took less than like a minute. So,
yeah.
um, and I think you're 100% right. When you're looking at the same spreadsheet for, let's say, 2, maybe 3 hours, which doesn't seem like a lot of time if you're hearing this now, but if you're actually looking at the same spreadsheet tab for 2 or 3 hours, I don't know about you, but there's times where like I kind of forget, okay, so what's the goal of this? Like, I need to be generating what number? So
Yeah.
sometimes it's relying on a company or a system like ChatGPT, or going for a run kind of in between. You come back to the same spreadsheet in the afternoon and be like, okay, you know what? I thought about it. I'm going to simplify it. I'm going to remove these items. And you kind of come into it with, a fresh perspective, or even bringing in like someone else in the company. Like, I would do that for this one spreadsheet I've been working on today, where I've got 8 or 9 different columns of numbers that I need to pull out and enter. And I told someone, I said, look, I'm going to take care of row or columns, A, B, and C. You do D, E, and F, and then we'll meet tomorrow and just make sure everything, all checks out. Like, sometimes uh, that will help too. But just pulling this back to the whole idea of like systems and processes, and how that relates to spreadsheets. You know, it's putting together a system that is going to help make your job easier and simpler. And then from that, you're checking meeting with the people who you've assigned to, do the specifics, and then like clockwork, you just add it to your calendar, or you add it, to your schedule board or your clipboard, and say, okay, you know what? It's Wednesday, it's 11 o'clock. That's when I meet with the property team, and we take a half an hour, no more, and say, okay, what are our questions? What are we noticing? Because the whole idea of something like a spreadsheet for, a property report, a meeting shouldn't take more than like a half an hour. I mean, if the
Hmm.
system is doing what it's supposed to do, that meeting should be, effective, not super long, and the numbers should say, okay, hey, look, we've got a problem here. This house we're spending too much on expenses. And if the system works, it'll catch that as soon as that number is, like entered in.
Yeah, I think that's a good gauge of how effective the spreadsheet and the process is. How long does it take you to actually get the answers that you actually need to affect change in your business and get closer to your goals? How long is it taking, an hour? Do you have to go and rearrange and do a bunch of things just to get the answers to those questions, or is it right there in your face? And I can tell Brooke like, hey, you know, um, this property was the reason why we were over our budget for expenses, and this is why. And, that's like, I can find that within a few minutes, and we can just go down the list in a bullet point fashion, because that's how you're in a good spot, when it's just more organized and clean, and those answers that you need are pretty much right there.
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back. If you've been listening to this podcast, then you understand, or should understand, the pitfalls of investing in Cleveland real estate. Say you're looking for an investment property to rent, and these are the things that could happen, and often do. You overpay for a house, and it's in the ghetto. Then you find that it's a money pit with endless surprise repairs. Your hapless property manager, who may be the brother-in-law of the realtor, gets a tenant who after 3 months stops paying the rent. Then the toilet explodes, and you have nobody to repair it because, guess what? The property manager is not answering the phone. Yep, that's the ugly side of the Cleveland real estate market. But we have a solution. Buy one of our properties. It's been inspected. It's been vetted. It's in a rock-solid part of town. It comes with a Gold Star tenant paying top dollar rent, and we manage it. Call us at 216-371-8160 if you're interested.
Yeah, and you take that example of, a spreadsheet meeting report process, and you can, at least for me, like I love having different processes. Now, like I don't have a process for like my social life or like my personal life, but I find that my personal life and life outside of work is more I I don't know how to say this professionally, but like you kind of have your shit together a little bit more if you're
Yeah.
doing your job, effectively, and you're pulling the right information out, and you've got systems in place, you know, whether it's paying your mortgage, going to the grocery store, you've got your checklist, you've got your chores on the weekends. For me, I mean, having a newborn who's 10 weeks old this week, I mean, you talk about implementing processes and systems. I mean, it's like, I mean, that's the most important systems and processes that I'm going through now. Just with my wife, it's like, okay, it's been 2 hours, time for the formula. Okay, time for this formula. Okay, it's been 3 hours. Okay, time for a nap. And, the first couple of weeks with my wife at home, I mean, it was like, we were learning it every day, like every hour. It was like, okay, that didn't work. Okay, we're not going to do that the next time. Where now it's like when we both get home from work, we don't even have to like say anything. We're just in this groove of like, all right, she's got the bottle,
Yeah.
I've got, I'm cleaning the kitchen. Okay, he's done with the bottle. I get the bath ready. Okay, the bath is done. Okay, now we do this, then we do that. So you're applying these systems and processes. You won't even realize it if you're doing it at work into your personal life.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I like having routines and habits and systems in place where, like, I'm not one of those types of guys where on the weekends it's like, well, I'll just kind of let the day figure itself out. It's like, no, like I know Saturday I've got to be here, then I got to get these things done. Then, yeah, after 6 o'clock, okay, you know, it's a little
Yeah.
more like go with the flow.
Yeah, for sure. I mean it's definitely spilled into my personal life. I mean, just using Google Calendar and all these spreadsheets and stuff just to track all these different things at work, it's just like, well, I can do the same thing for my personal expenses. I can, like I've got my bills on my iCalendar to get reminders and stuff like that. Oh yeah, this is coming out today, or oh, I need to send this today. Oh, I need to do this today. And like you said, it's certain. It's going to be pockets just outside of work that aren't, militarily strict, if that's a word. Um, but having that kind of foundational like organization throughout, it just carries over, because it's just the less surprises and the less like um things that are just coming out of left field and just throwing you off track of where you are, the more kind of predictable, especially on the money management side, or like we talk about exercising and diet a lot, um the more I can get those things to be just less unpredictable and just more in a flow. And then like once the more that you just, I think, do the iCalendar or whatever your method is, like my mom with her bill, she writes everything down on a notepad, what she's spending and stuff like that. You just get into a groove where you don't even think about it. Um,
Yeah.
like, even with like working in the company, kind of bringing it back to the processes, is like um, with our phone system and our way that we interact with customers and stuff like that. It's like at first working with a new person, it was like, oh, okay, Melanie, who's going to be editing this, she'll hear this. But it's like working with someone new. It's like there's all these situations that are new for her that might not be new for me, or there might be some stuff that's new for me. But it's like almost every different kind of call that we get, we're documenting and writing down what the script is going to be. So if we ever get a call like that again, we do have something in the process of like, oh yeah, this person, if this kind of person calls or they need this kind of thing, then we know how to deal with that. And then you reference that and write it down up until the point where you're not even thinking about it. It's like, oh yeah, this kind of person goes to Amarri, or this kind of estimate is like, something I would give Brook, or, that's a good spot. And without going on a super long tangent, I agree with you, and that's the goal, is to get it to where it's just it's operating very smooth, and it takes time to get there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It takes time and it takes the discipline to, you know, every day, every week, you're checking it, you're measuring it, what's working, what's not working. And if you figure out what's not working, you kind of go to that next step. It's like, okay, is it the actual system or the process, or is it the wrong person who's doing it?
Right.
But as long as you're being honest with yourself about, you know what, no, we just got to keep plowing ahead. We just got to, keep, um, I don't know if you've seen that movie, Amari, Moneyball, but you talk about like a good example of, they took the time, they had their whole system, a process. Like, look, we have to get, 300 runs. These are our players. And, in the early stages of that season, they weren't really hitting their goals, but they stuck true to their plan and they adapted. They said, okay, you know what? It's not working because the coach isn't picking the players that we chose in this initial process. So once they made that change, it's the whole, like, the famous Oakland A's went on that 20 game win streak and went to the playoffs. And so I always kind of keep that movie in mind when I'm creating a new process and working through something. It's going to take time. There's, expect resistance, expect people to not want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, figuring out, okay, like, why don't you want to do this? And most of the time it's like, well, it's just one more thing that I have to do. Or they don't want to do it because they're scared that they'll screw up.
Right.
And once you kind of figure that out, it's like, okay, let's try to, work through this.
Right.
I remember when we were going through as a company, at the height of COVID, the whole idea of like non-billables and how we did payroll, where we were doing our payroll where guys were sending in a physical copy of like a work order, which at the time was, you know, you wouldn't blink twice about that. It's like, okay, yeah, they've got, a paper, they're filling it out, sending it in. The payroll team is entering it in. And it's like, well, when you learn to work from home and you've learned to work on spreadsheets and VPN, um, there's no one in the office, or there
Mm-hmm.
aren't as many people in the office. So we need to adapt and figure out a way to still, enter in the payroll, which is very important for a business, um, given the constraints of a pandemic. And on top of that, losing someone to another job, and trying to fill that role, you come into it with like a new perspective. Be like, hey, look, you know what? I've done a lot of work on spreadsheets. Maybe there's a way that we can incorporate a spreadsheet into you know, tracking a work order. And at the time, man, I got so much pushback. I
Yeah.
got, I was saying, nope, I don't like that. I like to do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, trying to talk them up. And it got to the point where I had to say in a professional way, it's like, you know what, look, this is what we're doing. So you need to just get with the program. I'm here to
Yeah.
help you. You're doing great. Every week, we're going to just improve it, improve it, and improve it. And now, I mean, it's, it runs like clockwork where the VAs send out the spreadsheet each weekend, guys fill them out. You don't need to send it in. You don't need to make copies of it. Everything's on the cloud. Everything's on Google. And I mean, you tell me, but like, that's a process that just is the perfect example of what we're talking about here.
It's like the opposite now. Like if you were to say, you know, hey guys, we're gonna go back to physical time sheets
Oh,
for
they'd be
everybody.
pissed.
Oh yeah, no, it'd be a revolution.
I mean, like
Insurrection.
I remember I told them, I said, like, I'm making your job easier.
Yeah, right.
You might not realize that now, but
Right.
in a couple of months, trust me, you're gonna be like, man, You know, if you have questions, I'm like, oh shit, did he get 7 hours that day or 8? Oh, I gotta pull up a physical. Nope, go on Google. It's right there. Everything's right there.
Yeah.
You know,
A
so
perfect example of just human nature of, you just get so used to doing something, even if change is better, you can still be resistant to it. And so it, like you said, it's just that amount of time and eventually it does get to that place of just like, hey, this is what we're doing. And, you
yeah,
know, you'll thank me later.
exactly. Well, okay. Well, I think this was a good. This was definitely a relevant, good topic. I know it's something that you and I we don't necessarily always realize it, but I mean, this is something that you and I do every single day.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's like the fact that we're not even realizing that we're working through a system or a process just it just shows that like, hey, if you take the time, you know, you put the framework together of whatever problem you have, whatever process you need figured out, you just every day, every week, you just stay on top of it. And over time, it'll get to the point where you don't even have to think about it. You just know, okay, it's Tuesday, I'm doing this. Wednesday,
Right.
I'm doing this. I'm meeting with them on Thursday about this. And it'll make your job, I don't want to say easier, but it's not going to hurt it if you know, start implementing these types of things.
Yep. 100% agree.
So, all right, everyone. Well, I think that's it. Amari, I'll talk to you later about
Yep.
some more processes and systems.
Oh, yeah. Sounds good, Brooke. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast with Mike Riley. Please add our show or follow us on Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. Leave a like or comment on the video. All engagement is appreciated. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well for video content coming soon. For any Cleveland listeners or Cleveland Browns fans, you can check out our other podcast, Cleveland Browns Anonymous, for our weekly group therapy session. This is also on all the same platforms as the Cleveland Real Estate Investor.